it was a very challenging, very challenging case, starting with the patient profile. She was a 59-year-old female with comorbidities of diabetes, hypertension, rheumatoid, and she was immunocompromised in the way that she had already had a list of repeated infections over the past 1 year. Her past surgical history included 2 previous surgical surgeries, which was dorsal decompression done in 2019 and lumbar decompression for OLF done in Feb 2023. Initially, after all, 1.5 years post the second surgery, she was admitted for recurrent urinary tract infections and IV antibiotics were started. But she complained of some neurological symptoms like difficulty in walking with a decrease in power, especially of the left lower limb. So this was the imaging which was done when she was admitted for treatment of UTI. You can see that there's a small disc in the third last segment. So initially she was managed for her UTI with IV antibiotics, and the spine was managed conservatively. No surgical intervention was done.
What explains the lower limb deficit here?
Sir?
She presented with saying lower limb deficit.
Yes, sir. We initially thought it was the disc at the, We initially thought that it was the disc at the L3, L4 level. That was the reason for her lower limb symptoms.
Really not.
Yes.
So what do you think? How are you thinking?
So, sir, when we did the MRI, we realized that obviously it does not explain her symptoms. So we waited until she was medically better, and then we investigated further.
There are no fat suppressed images, no stir images?
No, sir. Of this MRI, we don't have any stir.
Always, I mean, you almost always get it.
Why?
Because that's going to show you this bone edema, fluid collection more easily, right? Here you could easily miss that stuff, like that vertebral body that's a bit wedged. You don't know what, this is just a T2-weighted image, so I don't know what's happening in the anterior half of that vertebral body. That's there. Then posteriorly, there's a decompression, but you don't know if there's a collection sitting over there, something else happening posteriorly. Because also with the CSF space, if you have a collection there and you have just one series like you've shown like this, which is T2, then that collection may blend completely into the CSF. It won't be as obvious. So you need to look at that, and obviously the axials, and you need to look at the fat suppressed.
So as a radiologist, how do you compare a stir image here vis-a-vis a IV post contrast image?
So a stir image is basically going to suppress all the fat, show you fluid kind of more brightly. So you will see bone marrow edema, and you will see things like you'll see fluid collections. On an IV contrast study, actually the utility of IV contrast is questionable in many cases. But in an IV contrast study, again, if you don't do fat suppression, sometimes those things may be harder to see. And you have to compare the pre and post contrast images, and you will look for enhancement along the rim of the collection. And that usually helps you.
Granulation is better seen in IV contrast, and other infection can be picked up. I mean, as clinicians, we always hesitate to prescribe an IV contrast. It adds to the cost, adds to the risk of
Yeah.
everything.
So you don't need to. I think the easiest thing that I tell most clinicians to do is say, please do a scan, but give the radiologist the prerogative of saying when to give contrast and when not to. What we end up is saying, most of the time we see reports that say, please do with IV contrast. But many times you don't need the IV contrast. And similarly, many times you say without IV contrast, and then you may want to give it. So if you put a prescription out there that says IV contrast as needed, then the patient knows that if they need it, they'll give IV contrast. They don't, because we tend to have to struggle with patients then after that. Nahi, doctor ne bola IV contrast mat do. Then the patient comes back to you, they say nahi contrast karo, then they come back. So this way it's easier.
From your perspective, but
Yeah.
we find a lot of unscrupulous
Like
radiologists randomly,
Yeah.
we're talking about randomly
Yeah.
says do IV contrast.
Yeah, me, I know. Don't talk about me like that, okay?
So
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Stir is a very good place to start.
And do we need to specifically tell them to give a stir, or it's a part of the...
It's always a part of the series. Always. I mean, very rarely. So the only thing is that most of the time you will get a coronal stir is what most centers do. if you want a sagittal spur specifically, and not just in this case, but say for example you're looking for past stress reaction, or you're looking for any of those things, sometimes a sagittal stir is more helpful. So it may be good to specify, do a sagittal stir in those situations.
Sir, like you had asked, we had initially done an MRI to rule out any disc pathology because she already had a previous history. Plus, we were thinking of infection too. But this current MRI, we don't have the fat suppressed images, and it did not. There was no evidence of gross infection. So when it comes to the medical management, we started with. We started with the IV antibiotics, and spine we conserved and started with the neuro rehab. But after 2 weeks, there was no neurological improvement. There was persistent lower limb weakness. So we started reconsidering, and we were thinking of infective causes, like I said, postoperative neuropathy and GBS. Then once she was medically better, we went ahead and did a CF analysis, did a CSF tap, which came out to be positive for GBS, and immunoglobulins were started accordingly. This was in Feb 2025. She again came back with new symptoms such as acute bilateral leg pain, difficulty in walking, and a neurology of the bilateral lower limb was 1/5. We went ahead with a fresh MRI.
How long after the GAVERI was
1 month, sir. So this is the MRI which we got done. So as you can see, the MRI shows gross infection at the same level with the collection. At that point also, she was medically unfit. So we went ahead with a CT guided biopsy, drained the collection, PICC line was inserted for IV antibiotics, and sample was taken. The sample showed candida, and for that antifungals were started, which is our regular, which is IV antibiotics for 6 weeks, followed by oral therapy for 6 weeks. CRP and ESR were done on a regular basis, which over this time did show a decreasing trend. Now this is in July, that is 6 months later, right? She presented with severe back pain, which was of the instability type, and again the lower limb power was not improving, it was still 1/5. We went ahead, did imaging once again. We wanted to check for spinal instability, and we did the supine sitting and standing lumbar spine X-ray. This is the MRI of June 2025, that is 6 months after she was diagnosed with GBS.
You can have a collection like this. You can have these collections also increasing while people are being treated. You can have them decreasing. Usually the collections tend to decrease when people are being treated. Whether there's active or not, you have to, one is bone marrow edema would help you to determine the changes in bone marrow edema. Changes in the size of the collection would help you to make a decision. And then I think there are variables that can give you bone marrow edema also. Like you can have it because in this case there's instability at this level, you'll have bone marrow edema from that micro instability. So saying specifically without looking at this in sequence is hard.
We don't have other TIVA.
We do, sir, but I'll have to know.
The initial culture only grow fungus.
Yes, sir, only fungus. No. So that was in Feb. This is 6 months later.
So summarizing, this lady was morbidly obese, severe. She was admitted to the hospital with septicemia, secondary to pyelonephritis. And I think that is what seeded in the spine because there was no intervention which was done. Based on the IV antibiotics which were given for pyelonephritis, those antibiotics were continued and a second CT aspiration was done, which added candida. So additional antifungal was given. At this stage, the infection had actually settled down. We had to wait for so long because she was really struggling between making the MRI showed that the infection was nearly settled, but there was significant instability, which was adding to the loss of power because of dynamic compression. And we were not able to do any kind of physiotherapy. So this is where we are at, and this is where then we decided that we'll go in and operate. Because by this time, all other parameters were sorted out, and we were in that reasonable frame where we could take her up for surgery.
Like,
So, plan anyone? Sir, how would you? Amit.
Are you really seeing so much movement in your supine versus sitting MRI X-ray to say that this is unstable? Is there that much movement at L5, 4, 3, 2, 2, 3 to say that this is an unstable thing? I'm not seeing that kind of huge movement there.
but sir, there seems to be dynamic compression, right? And
But it's not significant.
It's not significant. See the movement at,
A significant angular or transverse.
yeah, there is nothing. It's just staying steady. The power has nothing to do now. It's probably with your Guillain-Barré that you've got a power loss. The problem is whether you are treating the patient, your infection is controlled. Now the only thing you are treating the patient is for instability. If you are treating this patient for instability, there should be gross demonstrable instability in a person with the kind of comorbidities that you have explained to me, that she's highly obese, diabetic, rheumatoid, immunosuppressive, multiple fungal infections, pyogenic infections. I would be wary of offering her any kind of surgical intervention at this stage.